if you pee when you sneeze, if you pee when you laugh, if you can't jump or dance or go on a trampoline or run for the bus without peeing, then that's a level of incontinence. Diastasis recti is considered a cosmetic issue. What we do know is that postpartum incontinence doubles the risk of postnatal depression.
Hello, I'm Harriet Gisborne.
And I'm Kelly Allison.
And welcome to Health Applied, the podcast,
where we have raw, honest conversations around all things health and wellness.
Let's dive in. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome to today's episode of Health Applied. We have an incredible guest with us today, Wendy Powell, who is founder of Mutu Systems, which is a women's health exercise platform backed and trusted by healthcare professionals.
Wendy is an incredible pioneer in the women's health space and a much needed voice and advocate to educate and change things. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
So getting going, tell us all about him and where you had quite a story, and I've read a lot about it online, but tell us all about it and what's led you to this moment.
Yeah, so Mutu has been around for more than 15 years. My background is as personal trainer originally, so I was in fitness rather than medical. And then I had my babies who are now 20 and 18. And during that time, I was a certified personal trainer, specifically specialising in pre and postnatal. So had all the certificates, all the pieces of paper. Then I had my own babies and realised that most of what I'd learned and been taught to teach and trained to train wasn't enough. And so I was then experiencing what I had been hearing from clients for a long time around issues specifically around core and pelvic floor that just didn't have answers in fitness at the time. Fitness knows a lot more now than it did then, but still very much an area, core, pelvic floor, everything down here is woefully understood when it comes to the fitness world. And even a lot of areas of medical as well. There's a lot of dismissal. There's a lot of dismissal. So I started putting together what would become Mutu System. At the time, I was in fitness. That was my industry. That was where I worked. But fitness didn't really have the answers. Diastasis recti, prolapse, incontinence, all of the back pain, painful sex, none of those things were being covered. And so I went looking for answers somewhere else. I started studying in biomechanics. I started working with physiotherapists and physical therapists. I do a lot of work in the States as well. Midwives, sex therapists, OBGYNs. I was like, somebody must know this stuff.
I'm a desperate hunt for the answers.
So somebody must know this stuff. And amongst all of those, we I started to put it together. So this was what I was building when the kids were tiny. And started putting it together. So the first version of Mutu was me in the back garden with a flip camera taped to a tree, doing some exercises. And then literally Googling, how do you make a website? How do you put videos on the website and charge people to watch them?
This is a true entrepreneur. I've got a vision
amazing.
And Google's going to tell you how to do it. But there was ChatGPT back then.
Yes, no, there was definitely no ChatGPT back then.
And very advanced back then as well, because actually nowadays it's a very hot topic, right? But back then it wasn't.
No,
so
nobody was talking
We're
about it.
the beginner of on-demand content.
It might be.
Did you start this whole?
Go with it.
I will. So I started building it and I was like, and then again, what there also wasn't, definitely no ChatGPT, but there was no Instagram or anything like that. It was all Twitter. And so I then sent my stuff. I kind of recorded these videos and I sent them I hunted down women's health specialists, pelvic health physical therapists, physiotherapists in the States, in Australia, here. And I sent them my stuff and I was like, is this safe? Is this right? Would you give this to your patients? What would you change? That's been the constant through Mutu with over the years, which is even though the program is definitely not me in my back garden doing exercises anymore,
That'd be
thankfully. But the constant throughout has been that clinical input. I've always worked, and now we have a great board of advisors, OBGYNs, midwives, physios. That clinical input and feedback has been a constant throughout. So that's sort of why we've ended up where we are at this sort of intersection of wellness and clinical evidence and working with health systems. So it's gone through lots of stages over the years. Incredible. The production is very different now. We have a beautiful, diverse cast of women doing all the work. So different body types, ages, because we work through all life stages, so that everybody sees themselves within the programme.
Love
Incredible. And I'd love just to dive a little bit deeper into what you said about working through all life stages.
Yes.
Because I know you're well known for that postnatal care, but it's actually a lot wider than that, isn't it?
It is, and the reason it started there was because that was why I built it, right?
Yeah.
So I just had babies, and that was what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so originally, for me, all of my research and study was around, well, diastasis recti, abdominal separation, urinary incontinence, etc. These are postpartum issues. And of course, they're not just postpartum issues. And that was something that became clear through our work, which was that the women coming to us, many of them are mums, some of them are new mums, but actually it was from all life stages. And what we see now, because we've been going quite a long time, we get a lot of returners. So for sure, women will come back like, oh, this worked for me after my first baby, now I've had another one, so for sure they'll do that. But what we also see is, oh, my kids are grown up and gone. But now I'm coming into perimenopause, menopause, and what's with the incontinence issues, what's with the bladder leaks, you know, sort of things happening for the first time. So sometimes it's symptoms re-emerging, and sometimes it's symptoms manifesting for the first time later. So
And I know you mentioned a few symptoms there, and on this podcast we chat to so many amazing women and specialists, and a common running theme is that from a health perspective, women often suffer in silence and think, oh, that's just something I've got to deal with. Oh, that's happening. I've had children. That's just the way it is now. You listed off quite a few symptoms. For any listeners that are suffering, what key symptoms would you be comfortable saying, okay, you don't actually have to suffer in silence for this. There is something that can be done.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so many of these things, as you say, they're considered normal. So for I would say the first problem that we have is that the normalisation of symptoms and women's pain is the biggest culprit here.
Yeah, agree.
It's the fact that we are led to believe, whether it be by our mums, our friends, the social media, or a doctor, that this is just what happens.
Yeah.
If it happened to men, they wouldn't be putting up with it.
So true.
Exactly. And it's, you know, that's just what happens when you have babies. That's just what happens as you get older. And so first of all, it doesn't need to be, right? So the symptoms that I'm talking about, starting with incontinence. Now, when I say incontinence, a lot of people will jump to, that's a kind of old person problem. That means like completely flooding, full emptying of the bladder. By incontinence, what I mean in a medical sense is any leakage of urine when you don't want to be leaking urine, right? So if you pee when you sneeze, if you pee when you laugh, if you can't jump or dance or go on a trampoline or run for the bus without peeing, then that's a level of incontinence. So that's what we deal with. A lot of, you'll often see it written as bladder leaks or oops moments and all of these other sort of ways that people like to describe it and normalise it. So that's one of the major things that we deal with is pelvic floor issues, pelvic floor control and function.
So you can repair that through...
You absolutely can repair that, yes, absolutely. Another big one that we deal with is diastasis recti, which is abdominal separation. It's when the rectus muscles at the front part, which is completely normal during pregnancy, but don't always go right back together. That causes instability of the core. It can contribute to back pain. It can also be associated with incontinence. So all of these issues are related. It's all part of the core muscle system. Related to that too, pelvic organ prolapse symptoms. That one is worth mentioning what it feels like, because prolapse is prolapse is actually very common in the sense that 50%, half of women at some point in their lives will have some level of prolapse. However, important to note that many of them, it will be asymptomatic. Okay, it would only come up if they were having an examination and maybe a medic might say, oh, you've got a bit of a prolapse there. What that means is that some organs within your pelvic cavity, so that could be bladder, bowel, vagina, uterus, have descended in some way. So they've dropped, they've fallen into each other, they're impacting on each other, or they've just come down. Very common, very normal. Prolapse is measured in what they call grades, 1 through 4. Now, so a grade 1 prolapse, lots of women have got it. You probably don't even notice it. But what you might feel is kind of a feeling of heaviness or bearing down.
Do you know what? I think I've had that. After it gives me shivers thinking back. So I'm so sorry to jump in, but you literally just completely vocalised a memory. After having my daughter, for maybe a couple of months afterwards, I'd always have to randomly sit down or lie down because I felt like my insides were going to fall through my vagina. And I just felt this weird, like, heavy pull down. And it was just so uncomfortable, and it went away after a while. But I think that's
You've literally
quite
described
similar.
the symptoms of pelvic organ prolapse. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Don't panic about it. It's not, as I say, it's a really common thing, and it's really it's relatively easy to manage too. But it's all about pressure and systems and breathing techniques and things. But so what you're describing is those feelings of heaviness, bearing down, dragging, like a tampon's falling out, like something's going to fall out, sitting on a ball. Those are sort of what it's often described as. Now, the grades go so if you've got a grade 4 prolapse, something has literally protruded from your body. Okay, so that's 4. So obviously, definite differences in severity and what treatment would be recommended. Grades 1 and 2, we can manage that. Okay, obviously you're going to need surgical intervention for more severe cases. So diastasis, incontinence, prolapse, and associated back pain, painful sex, all of these things are related. So those are all the sort of symptoms that we address.
The impact that you can have on women's lives.
Yeah. And what's really interesting for me is when women sit outside of labels. So when we, for example, if we take incontinence, so we go to the doctor and the doctor will say stress incontinence is this, urge incontinence is this, mixed incontinence is this. And when I went with my bladder issues, which we were just discussing before we started, so for 13 years since the birth of my first daughter, I've had incontinence. I didn't have the typical stress, urge or mixed symptoms. My symptoms were almost like a tap that was turned on, that was dripping. So it was continuous, it was very small amounts, and it was just annoying enough that you were aware. And I had a lot of problems with UTIs, chronic UTI, which I actually thought was definitely down to that as a problem. Why it was so difficult for me was that I was trying to be put in a box by medical professionals. So they would say, well, we don't quite know how to treat this. We'll give you some medication for as if it's stress incontinence. Do Pilates for this. And I didn't fit into that box. And there must be so many people listening who go, I've got something that sounds a little bit like this and a little bit like this, but it doesn't fit necessarily all the classic signs. And I actually had to take matters into my own hands, and I did so much research and I read so many clinical white papers and I tried functional medicine. I tried so many things. The only thing that fixed it for me was actually going through surgery and paying for that privately and having an abdominoplasty. And the reason I had that was to repair diastasis recti. The primary reason I had that was to stop the incontinence. And honestly, I can say, having been through, and I've only had it 2 months ago, so I'm still early in my healing. I was still like limping down the road to Kegels just now, like trying to carry the things. But just the fact that straight away that incontinence has stopped.
She's dry.
The change, and the change in my life from that, because I was wearing pads all the time. And even, TMI, but sometimes when you go to bed and it's summer and it's hot, you don't even want to wear pants. Like Harriet is always just sleeping naked, and I'm like, I can never do that because I just can't. I've got to wear pants.
You can now.
And now I can sleep naked. And it's that sense of freedom that I've had to pay for. My question is, why is we know that women's postpartum care, particularly in the UK, is atrocious. The 6-week check that women go to, for me personally, but I'm sure for a lot of people listening, is also atrocious. Why is this, and what can we do about it?
You're so right in that it's woefully inadequate as a check, and most women's experience of that check, that meeting, that appointment is that it's all about the baby anyway. It's not really about you. And the doctor may say to you, like, pelvic floor okay, give you some condoms, and kind of it's literally that's it. And what a lot of women report as well is that they're worrying about their new baby, any questions that they have, the doctor's time they want to take up with that. It's also very early. So 6 weeks is early on. And so what we find is that a lot of women tend to find or go searching for solutions around these issues quite a lot later than that. 6 weeks, everything's very new.
And you're so overwhelmed.
Exactly.
You haven't even processed what's happened to your body, let alone any challenges you might be having.
And you might have had a C-section, so you might not be able to get back to kind of any kind of strength training or Pilates or any kind of pelvic floor exercises necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. It's too early. It's not really focused on you as the mom. It's focused on the baby. And so, one, that's not really addressed. And as you say, that the aftercare isn't really there, because that's kind of it, isn't it? That's kind of the last time anybody's going to ask you, unless you go and ask them.
True. It's so true. How awful
and the
is
health
that?
visitor, again, they don't know anything about
No.
that, you know. So it's, it is atrocious, and it's really sad, because so many women do suffer in silence. And then you've got the added issue here, which you mentioned earlier about people not suffering in silence, is because these are not issues like, oh, my leg hurts, I've got a twisted ankle. These are intimate issues.
It's embarrassing for
It's
some
embarrassing.
people,
It's shameful.
We need to normalise it. This is why it's so good we're having these conversations.
All these issues are shrouded in, you know, and there might be cultural or religious reasons why you don't talk about these things.
That's true,
There are so many reasons why, but women are not even presenting to their doctors with these problems, because they think they're normal, because they think that's just what it is. So they're managing, they're using pads, they're just getting on with their life. This is just my reality. You know, I hear this all the time, you know, a bag with a spare pair of knickers, bunch of pads, a pair of black leggings.
That's literally me.
Yeah.
Used to be you.
Used to be me. I love
Used
this.
to be you.
But why should you have to pay to change that to the extent of having a major abdominal surgery?
And if you had diastasis recti, would the NHS not support in that being rectified? Because that's giving you ongoing health issues. Is that not at all supported?
Not necessarily.
No, and I'll tell you why, because the connection isn't made. So as you found with your experience, diastasis recti is considered a cosmetic issue. Okay,
That is effing ridiculous.
So
you couldn't. I'm sorry.
Separated abdominals and a tummy that you don't like the look of, that doesn't work quite right, your core's not strong. There are cases when it would be, but you would have to be able to really show and evidence that this was severely impacting, for example, back pain or mobility generally. So, but on the whole, diastasis recti is very common, and what it looks like, in case anybody's wondering, what is that? How do I know if I've got it? What it means is that those vertical muscles at the front didn't go back together again. They kind of stay apart. It creates an instability in your core, so it means that your core can't quite function or be as strong as you would like it to. That means that you may have lower back pain. That's going to be associated, and it means that you also may have associated incontinence. So, but nobody's making those connections. So just like you found, you know, you knew because of your research that if I do this abdominal surgery, that even the surgeon won't commit to it affecting my incontinence.
Would not even talk about it.
But you knew, because you'd done your work to know that this
Yeah.
system is all connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Isn't that crazy that as women we literally grow life and reproduce the human race inside our bodies, in our abdomen, where all those organs sit. And the simplicity of needing to prove acute back pain to have that solved, there's so many other things other than back pain that growing a human in your abdomen will create. But yet you have to prove acute back pain to have the surgery.
I know.
Mind blowing.
It's
I'm
associated
offended
stuff
by
too.
this.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I've just learned this.
Yeah.
The thing is too that there are so many associated things. I mean, for example, sex hurting. Again, of women dealing with that situation, there are a million reasons why they're not going to just go present to their GP and say this is an issue, this hurts. And even then, for those connections to be made, you know, because there are lots of reasons that could be the case. But you know, one of them for sure is around pelvic floor function and hormones. So there's that. And then, for example, around mental health as well, in that, I mean, what we do know is that postpartum incontinence doubles the risk of postnatal depression. Now, when you hear that, that's not strictly surprising, because, you know, it's as I say, it's more than a twisted ankle. This is intimate,
isn't it?
It's affecting everything about your life, how you show up in every facet of your life. But yeah, because those connections aren't made, it's kind of, it doesn't come together as one issue. So each one is so your diastasis was addressed as a surgical procedure, but your incontinence was being addressed in a totally different way by a totally different consultant.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that really kind of blows my mind is the fact that had the NHS, or there'd been a way on the NHS to be able to kind of understand this early doors. I've spent 13 years seeing 4 urologists, having 2 cystoscopies, urodynamics, 2 laparoscopies, all kinds of things, trying to find out what the cause is. All they actually needed to do, but all I needed was that abdominoplasty in the beginning, and had I known about that 13 years ago, oh my gosh, would I have done that straight away?
Actually viable for the NHS.
Well,
to
it
actually
would,
do that.
absolutely. It's the amount of money that is being wasted on trying to understand what's happening to women's bodies, when actually that women are having to then understand that for themselves and then take action for themselves. Yeah.
Crazy. And talking about NHS and numbers, I'm going to have to read this one. So your incredible platform is now available through the NHS, and I've got some amazing stats here. Having them included in NHS pathways has showed a net economic benefit of 388,000 over a 5-year cohort. That is outstanding.
Yeah.
What was your journey like getting involved with the NHS, and how does that partnership work today?
So first, I would say that not everybody can get it through the NHS. So I do have to say that it's only contracted in a few areas. But where it is and what that looks like is, I'll rewind. I worked with the NIA, which is the NHS Innovation Accelerator, some years back, got involved with them, and then started doing some work with them about getting MooToo in the pathway, as you say. Now, a big part of that journey to having NHS contracts is something that is required by pretty much anybody sort of going that route, which is something called an economic evaluation, i.e. you have to show in raw money numbers that your solution, innovation, treatment will save the system money. Yeah. So, and this is a really interesting one because it relates to what we were just talking about too. So when we had this independent evaluation done, so it wasn't funded by us, it was funded by the NHS, so it was independently done. In order to economically evaluate something, you have to compare it to something, right? So there has to be a current pathway that costs X amount in order to compare your solution that would cost Y amount to it. Now, out of all those symptoms that we've talked about that we deal with at MooToo, only 2 have a pathway.
Which 2?
Incontinence and prolapse.
Wow.
Okay, so none of the others. So obviously there is some form of pathway for back pain, but there are so many multiple causes and factors involved there. Painful sex as a result of core and pelvic floor health. There is no pathway. Mental health as a result of pelvic floor health. There is no pathway. So that was really interesting because it was
shines a light on the gap there.
It really did. Now the positive news to come out of that which was only addressing 2 out of 5 or 6 symptoms, the study still found a positive net economic result for the system. So what that means is it literally looked at what is the pathway now. So, for example, you're a great example of this very expensive and lengthy and convoluted pathway to attempt to find some sort of resolution to a problem. So whether it be incontinence or prolapse, there's quite a few bits in the middle. So there might be physio, there's going to be a number of other consultant type appointments. There might be pessaries for prolapse, that's another treatment, through to surgery, of course, surgery being the most invasive and the most expensive. So that's what they did. They kind of compared and then they took a cohort of women who had done MooToo with those symptoms, who obviously did not then need all of those other things. So that's sort of how that came about. So that economic evaluation was really instrumental in that contract win.
And being a woman found platform as well. Yeah. That is absolutely phenomenal. I think it's 1% of corporate spend globally goes to women-owned businesses. And we had an incredible venture capitalist on the podcast a month or so back, and we spoke around the challenge of funding going to women's health solutions, but women's health solutions founded by women is almost invisible as a percentage. So what an achievement.
Yeah,
that's
well done.
Absolutely
you should be
outstanding.
So proud on behalf of all the women that you've helped. It's incredible. It's really good. Have you done it organically? Have you bootstrapped yourself?
Yeah, we're bootstrapped. We have no investors. So yeah.
It's amazing.
And I think a real positive shining light of hope for other women out there, and maybe non-women, who have women's health solutions and ideas, because things need to change.
Yeah.
And I know we can all talk about how the dots aren't connected, our consultants aren't talking to each other, but actually doing what you did and thinking, I'm going to research this and I'm going to find my own solution. It's so empowering to know that you've bootstrapped yourself and you've gone out and you've done it, and look at the difference that you've made. I mean, I'm sure there's tens and hundreds of thousands of women that it's transformed the quality of their life.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it does. And I think, thank you for those words, but I mean, it does. Yeah, well over 100,000 women have been through as paying subscribers, and plus, of course, we have these other health system partnerships, as well as some employee benefit partnerships as well. So we reach women in lots of different ways. I think what's been really wonderful as well from my point of view, I remember back in the early days sort of making this for myself really, or for my clients, at the postnatal stage, the postpartum stage. And kind of, I think at the beginning, I thought I was just making an exercise program.
Yeah.
And then I remember doing an event in the States a few years down the line, and this woman, she said, "You've saved my marriage." And I was like, "Great, sorry, how did I do that?" But you know, but it was those sort of conversations that started to show me all of these related things, you know, because as I say, these issues, they affect how we show up at work, how productive we are, how focused we are. If they affect our intimate relationships, our social life. You know, how many, I know you'll relate to this, of when you're worried about pads, sweating yourself, you know, it affects what you say yes to. It affects whether you get up to dance. It affects, well, I don't really want to go there with them because I don't know where the bathroom is.
Yeah, exactly. And even being like on the beach in swimming costume and stuff, you're just really conscious all the time. And I've just come back from my first holiday post-surgery, and I'm like, I don't know how to think about these, and it's freeing. It's buying you freedom, and it shouldn't be like that. It's interesting because I think the three things that actually really are great about a business that thrives are when a founder has a pain point that they're addressing, which is obviously what you've done, a passion, which is obviously something you've got a passion for women's health, and your profession because you were working in fitness. So I think by ticking off those three key things, you've actually got this amazing product, which is brilliant. Talk to us a bit about how this can impact older women. So women who are going through perimenopause, menopause, how can they be affected? What kind of symptoms can they have, and how can you help them through Muti?
Sure. So around pelvic floor issues specifically, when it comes to incontinence, bladder leaks, sometimes these will be issues that women have handled or managed for a long time, and they may get worse as hormones start to shift, and they'll just notice subtle differences, like this is getting worse, that, you know, I'm leaking more, whether more volume more often, or it might be something that literally is manifesting for the first time as hormones change. So what's happening is, because of the estrogen dropping, that is affecting elasticity and function of all of those ligaments and tissues around. So, and there can be other effects of that, which relate to the painful sex that we talked about as well, from less lubrication, just less tissue elasticity and comfort. So all of those things that is something that will change with hormones. So that's something that isn't necessarily childbirth related at all, but it will affect how your pelvic floor functions, works, feels later. So pelvic floor work, like with Mutu, so exercises, breath work, understanding the core system and how all that works. Also vaginal estrogen can be really good for that, which is estrogen applied topically to the vulva, which can have a really good effect on a lot of those symptoms as well. So that's not like HRT, it's not going into your system in the same way, and so a lot of women really find a big benefit from that. So that's a great complement to what we do as well. But essentially it's those issues that could come in. And then what we also find, because we survey everybody that comes in, so we kind of know how old they are and what issues they're coming to us with when they first arrive. And what we find is that the sort of the newer mum demographic, their biggest concerns are likely to be around diastasis recti. That's probably the biggest one. They'll be many of them will be thinking about body weight and size, or body fat. And then as we go into that older demographic, the issues are more around prolapse and incontinence. So those symptoms are manifesting a bit more in later life. So we did a partnership with Tenor pads, STs, a couple of years back, and that obviously does tend to skew to an older audience, because a lot of women younger, you may relate to this, don't like to buy incontinence pads, so they use period products instead. Because they don't want to be seen to be buying incontinence products because they're for old ladies. And
I would buy mine on Amazon, bulk buy the tenner pads on Amazon so that no one saw them, and hope they would come in like a discreet box.
Exactly.
Which they didn't always.
And so many, they don't always. And so there's an awful lot of women dealing with these sorts of issues, and they're using period products, pads. They don't work as well, by the way.
No,
Please use the right pads. It's a different kind of liquid.
True.
It doesn't work in the same way.
So true. Yeah.
Oh, I would never have known that.
Yeah, I learned the hard way.
People kind of think a pad's a pad, right?
That's what I thought.
But no, incontinence pads have. It's like the chemical that's in nappies for babies. It's like crystals that so they neutralise smells as well as can hold much bigger volumes of liquid.
Oh my gosh, that's so good to know.
They're different things. So please don't use period pads.
No, it's so true.
Do you see through your research, and starting off on this journey, you did an incredible amount of research going all over the place. Have you noticed a common theme of a different level of support in different areas? Because we've chatted about this a lot, that in the UK, the system and the support isn't there that you hear about in other countries. What do you think are some of the best support systems that different countries have, and then some of the worst?
So we deal mostly with the US and the UK, neither of which I'm afraid are coming up trumps on either of those things. And the postpartum care is pretty appalling, and attention, like we talked about, a 6-week check and you're on your own, love, kind of thing. Some places that do it better are some parts of Europe, France, I for sure, I think Spain, some other European countries do offer postpartum physiotherapy, so pelvic floor physiotherapy as a given. So every woman that has a baby is offered physiotherapy. A lot of GPs in this country don't even know that pelvic floor physiotherapy is a thing. And they'll refer straight to surgery so it's pelvic floor physiotherapy is an excellent resource, and but you'll need to ask your GP to refer you, probably. They may very well not do it themselves, and of course there are private options there too, but pelvic floor physiotherapy, that's definitely the way to go if you're dealing with these things, and Mutu is a great complement to that.
I'm guessing that's more complicated than just your little squeezy, what's that called?
Kegels.
The Kegels,
The Kegels. I think it's more complex. And also, when anyone mentioned Kegels ever, I think every woman in the room starts squeezing.
And actually, in some situations, Kegels can do more damage depending on, because some people have a very, very tight pelvic floor, and actually you need to relax those muscles. And by doing the Kegels, you're actually strengthening those muscles, which you might need the opposite. So that's why it's important to understand what's actually wrong.
Wendy, for anyone listening who doesn't know what a Kegel is,
could
you give us a bit
of
a...
Do you know the really annoying part, which I'll get out the way first? It was invented by a man. Or the name was coined by a man.
We should rename it.
Exactly. So a Kegel, as most people understand it, is a pelvic floor exercise, meaning squeeze like you're trying not to wee, right? Squeeze like you're trying to stop the flow of urine. That's what most women will identify with when you say a pelvic floor exercise or a Kegel. It's not wrong, but it's only a tiny part of the process. So you absolutely rightly mentioned around hypertonic muscles, so muscles that are too tight. So as an example for that, so say my biceps here, right? If I turn on my bicep, and so my bicep is contracted, it's tightened, it's shortened as a muscle, there is extended and long, there is contracted. If I'm here already, and now I need my bicep, it's got nowhere to go. It's got nothing more to give me. And that's what's the problem very often with pelvic floor issues, in that it's not that a weak muscle isn't only too loose, a weak muscle can be too tight. So, for example, a pelvic floor muscle that is hypertonic or too tight means that it's kind of on all the time. It's switched on, it's contracted, it's engaged. Now, if your pelvic floor is already as engaged as it can be, and now your bladder's full and you can't get right to the bathroom, it's got nothing more to give you, right? It's got nowhere to go. So unless your pelvic floor, just like all your other muscles, is able to work through its full range of motion, to be fully extended and relaxed as well as fully contracted, it can't work for you. So, and unfortunately what happens with pelvic floor and leaks is that, of course, you've got a vicious circle then, because if you're worried about leaking, you're going to be hanging on all the time. So you're going to be permanently clenched and tense, to the point where it becomes unconscious. You don't even know you're doing it, but you're kind of just switched on the whole time.
Wow. And so, how do you know if you do have incontinence and leakages, how does one know whether their pelvic floor is too loose or too tight? And I'm guessing there might be different exercises needed to fix both issues.
Yeah, for sure. So there's two answers to this. So one is that the way that we teach pelvic floor exercises is, like I say, the Kegel squeeze is not wrong per se, but it's only half of the story. So we focus as much on cueing and guiding through the release phase, the let go phase, as we do of the contract.
I need this.
And
yeah.
And it's because it's so common.
Yeah.
It's like, everybody, we all think that a strong muscle in any context, in the gym, anywhere, a strong muscle is a short, tight one, right? But it's not. That's just it in one state, one part of its range of movement. So we cue and teach the release as much as the contract.
Thinking of like a bench press, when it's like up and then slowly down.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able to do both, right?
Yeah.
Just being static in one position is not doing the job. So it's only half the story, that's one thing. In terms of diagnosing exactly what you're dealing with, if you're trying rehab type exercises and you're not sure or it's not getting better, a pelvic floor physiotherapist will be able to tell you by examining you.
That's what I did. They did an internal and they said straight away, your muscles are so tight. And I said, I thought I had a weak pelvic floor because I've got incontinence. And she was like, your pelvic floor is really tight. Yeah. Like you need to do exercises to actually to allow that muscle to loosen, which I could really do with now, definitely. I think years of chronic UTIs, and actually talking about chronic UTIs, is that something that you find that is associated through, because for me it's always been associated with my pelvic floor. Do you find that? Do you have women who come to you for that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, and without question, that constant leaking, wearing pads all the time, always being in that situation is going to absolutely contribute to that. Yeah, for sure.
Gosh, the shit women have to deal with. Honestly. So, Wendy, I often find myself in this chair just racking my brains and talking over and over of what is the solution and all of the dots that aren't connected, how the clinicians don't talk to one another, how all the women don't know that there's something that can help them, that they don't have to. And we land on, like, we've got to educate, we've got to raise awareness, we've got to empower, we've got to have that voice. But what about bringing it to women earlier? Do you think there's a space to bring these conversations, these topics of women's health into school?
I would love that. Yes, absolutely. There is no too early. I mean, it's, but of course by very nature, and because we've all got lots going on in our lives, we don't tend to look for a solution for a problem until we have that problem. Yeah. And so most women will come to a solution like Mutu. They're searching for answers, they're Googling, they're on social media. When there's a problem, they've got a symptom, they've got a challenge that they need help with. But if, for example, if we take a postpartum woman, somebody that had a baby relatively recently, if you are trying to guide her on finding, engaging, connecting with, strengthening her pelvic floor, and you're doing that for her for the first time when she just pushed a baby out of said pelvic floor, that's not the easiest time to connect with that part of your body, right? So had she been able to do those exercises and get that guidance during pregnancy, or ideally even before that, then you would have that mind to muscle, that connection to know, okay, can't quite feel it because if you're post C-section, abs are going to be totally numb. If you had vaginal birth, that's going to be numb or sore or tender. You're not going to feel things in the same way. It will be sore, it will be tender, it will be different. But if your body knew what it was supposed to feel like before, you can sort of there's that validation of, okay, I can't totally feel it, but I know I'm doing the thing. And then gradually that feeling will come back. And doing those exercises will help it come back, because scar tissue behind a C-section and obviously pelvic floor damage, the more circulation, the more oxygenation into that area, that's going to help healing. So the whole process is good. But yes, earlier the better.
Do you know what I'd love to do? I think we should do an event, and I think the event should be 3 generations or more. So you've got your kind of younger girls, your like middle age, and then your mums or your grandmas, and actually everybody learning about, because there's so many things that each generation is going to be able to learn about. And I would love for my daughters, for example, to understand more about pelvic health. And if we could get this into schools, amazing. But wouldn't it be wonderful just to have an event that everyone could attend? I'd love to do that with my girls and my mum.
It'd be incredible. And I think, yes, it's about educating women younger, but I think a huge part of it is around normalising the situation and raising awareness that women's bodies are different to men's. And as a woman, your health is going to be different. Your symptoms is going to be different. How you connect, that's different. How you need a voice to advocate for yourself. Yes, you have the NHS, which is wonderful in some ways, but equally has its challenges, and these are the way you navigate it. Because if we've got this ongoing system and challenge where women are suffering in silence, that's going to continue generations and generations on. And these young girls need to feel empowered to advocate for themselves from day dot.
Absolutely. I've got a question for you, Wendy, actually. So I love your LinkedIn content. We were talking about this before. For anyone who doesn't follow Wendy, she's amazing on LinkedIn. What I'm really interested to know is, have you seen any algorithmic suppression through the fact that you're talking majority about women's health on social media? What have you observed? Yes, so have I. What's been your experience?
I guess I would say my experience is it's always been like that, because that's what I've always talked about. So I wouldn't say that I've necessarily seen a big difference in terms of, I think I'm just suppressed all the time. So please follow me.
Your content is amazing.
Everyone follow Wendy. We've got to change this.
Come on, let's see how many followers we can get you.
Exactly. So I think, because that's what we talked about. But I mean, in regards to our social media, talking to consumers, if you like, and talking to normal people, normal women about their symptoms, where we did see a big difference was around in advertising, paid advertising. So on Meta, on Instagram, on Facebook, that kind of thing. There's been a big shift over time of you can throw sort of 40 different types of ads and one might get through. It's just kind of, it's so suppressed. I mean, we see all these ads for women's health products or women's sexual health products, and there's different bits of fruit, or there's sort of all these bizarre visuals. Well, they're being used because
they have to be. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we all know we're not half an orange, but it's like nothing's getting through.
That's the problem. We think we're half an orange.
What did I post the other day on LinkedIn?
It was
my surgery. So I decided to share quite a brave post to talk about and to normalise what I'd been through for other women. And I shared a post which was me opening my binder for the first time post-surgery, and actually there was no graphic wound being displayed. I had this surgical tape on, so all you could see was actually a portion of my abdomen, and that was it. I posted it, and it was basically, I was shadow banned for a while, but the black screen over, this contains sensitive information, the click to see why. And my total impressions was 22. Wow. And I was like, are you joking? Why? And when you click see why, it says this contains graphic body parts. No, it doesn't. How is your midsection, a tiny bit of your midsection, a graphic body part? Like, come on. And also,
it's reading the wording.
Yeah.
And how many times do we see women's abdomens on billboards? But
exactly. In the beauty industry, it's fine. It's normalised. You would, and exactly that. Also, I've got a lady on LinkedIn who is a fitness coach, and she always posts pictures of her little crop top and her little cycling shorts. She was displaying so much more flesh than me, but because I was talking about it, and it was in the context of women's health recovery, abdominoplasty, tummy tuck, incontinence, all these things.
Heavens forbid you should give a voice to it. Let's mute you quickly.
But how can you have 22 impressions? Like, it's just, it's not okay. No. It's not okay.
Well, we've got to shout out about it.
Yeah, we do. That's why we're here.
I know.
Everybody's got to share that post now.
Oh, no, don't. I think I probably took it down because I was embarrassed. Have I kept it?
Sorry. I think you tried 3 times with different photos, even though it started off with not much exposure, less and less. Third time you posted it was, I'll let you finish.
No, you're right. You prompted my memory. Good old perimenopause brain fog. I wore a binder the whole way, but a beige binder. But because it was concealing a belly button, it was suddenly, the post was allowed. But even then, I mean, it got a couple of thousand impressions, and that's
better than 22.
It's better than 22, but it's still not optimal, is it? Yeah. I can't wait to try your platform as well. I'm really excited to try.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's all on there for you to follow. It's super simple, and there's a community on there which is private to our platform as well. So it kind of keeps it on topic as well.
Amazing.
No such thing as TMI.
No.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I've been told a lot of stuff.
Have you? I bet you have. So is Harriet. She's like, I'm used to it.
Essays about. Let me tell you about my birth experience. Okay.
Oh no.
Although I just love birth stories.
Yeah.
I've got mine on film, and anyone who will watch it, I show it to them. They're like, okay, thanks.
Would you like to? Okay.
I just like to normalise these things. And even I had a miscarriage, and anybody before this pregnancy, and anyone who asked how I was, I told them, because I just had this urge to normalise it. I just, this poor lady who I'd moved into my house, I don't know, a few months before, I'd met this really sweet young, she wasn't young, her children were young, mum. She lived a few doors up. She politely walked past and asked how I was. I was like, oh, I just have that. And she didn't ask that much information, but I just think normalise these things, because so many women go through them and think they're on their own, but they're not.
Thank you so much, Wendy. This has been such an insightful and interesting conversation. I'm sure there's so many listeners who are going to take so much from this. So thank you so much.
And not just for the chat, for the work you're doing to help women all over the shop. And genuinely, that work can hugely transform the quality of their lives. And thank you for dedicating so much research and time and years to it. Like, I'm inspired.
We need more Wendy's in the world. Come on, ladies.
I appreciate that. I take that.
Thank you. You're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love her so much.
Oh my gosh, what an episode.
Wendy, we need more Wendy's in the world.
We need more Wendy's. Isn't she absolutely incredible for giving that voice to women when they most need it?
Like I have learnt so much.
I know.
I am like a bursting energy of empowerment and knowledge, and we need to change the world, and what women go through isn't right. And my gosh, she took it on herself to find a solution, and she did. She's got into the NHS. No one does that. Not women founded businesses on female health.
I know, it's so hard, isn't it? And I feel seen, I feel heard. I feel like I needed Wendy in my life 13 years ago, and actually what she's doing and what we're doing is being able to get that voice and that knowledge out there to more people so that more women can feel empowered.
I was going to say, my main takeaway from that episode is do not normalise suffering. If you have had a baby or you're going through menopause, and if you have incontinence, if you have back pain, if you're feeling bearing down, any of that does not need to be normal. Women just experience these things and think, oh, I've had a baby. I now pee myself when I cough. Oh, I've had a baby. I now feel like my insides are falling out all the time. Doesn't have to be that way.
And also don't let healthcare professionals dismiss you, because I think that's the key part. A lot of women feel empowered and they go to speak to a doctor or a healthcare professional and they get told, oh, we could remove your bladder, which is what I got in my case, obviously after a number of years. But actually, you need to keep pushing. And pelvic floor physiotherapy is a really important part of getting yourself checked after birth.
Yeah, definitely. So we hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. And remember, follow, like, subscribe, and all that jazz.
If you want to get involved in the conversations, then please do drop us an email, hello@healthapplied.co.uk, or follow us on Instagram @healthappliedpodcast. Find us on TikTok, YouTube, or all of your major podcast platforms.
Thank you.